My name is Alara Vance, and I am 30 years old. For most of my 20s, I was the quiet, invisible architect of my family's comfort, the bedrock on which they built their lives while my own foundations remained unpoured. I learned early that love, in my family, was a transactional currency, and my worth was measured in my ability to provide. I spent 7 years paying that price, funding their desires and erasing their debts, believing that my sacrifice was the glue holding us all together. The truth, I would come to learn, was far more painful. It was a truth that crystallized on a cold Christmas morning when the carefully constructed illusion of our family finally, irrevocably, shattered. This story begins not with the crash, but with the quiet before the storm, in a city known for its gentle, persistent rain. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, the world felt soft-edged and green. We lived in a modest craftsman bungalow in the Laurelhurst neighborhood, a house with a wide front porch and a backyard filled with hydrangeas and the scent of damp earth. My father was a civil engineer who built bridges, a fact I found endlessly romantic as a child. My mother, Rose, was a kindergarten teacher, a woman whose warmth seemed to fill every room she entered. My sister, Claire, 3 years my junior, was our family's sunbeam. She had our mother's effortless charm and a bright, magnetic energy that drew people to her. I, on the other hand, was the quiet moon, content to reflect the light of others. Leo, the baby of the family by 5 years, was perpetually adrift in a sea of good intentions and half-finished projects, coasting on the certainty that someone would always be there to rescue him. We were, for a time, a picture of contentment, our lives underscored by the steady rhythm of rain on the roof and the comforting aroma of my mother's baking. The first fissure in our foundation appeared when I was 16. My father, the bridge builder, dismantled the one he had built at home. He had fallen in love with a younger colleague and was moving to San Diego. The divorce was a quiet demolition, less of a bang and more of a slow, grinding collapse. He met his child support obligations with the detached precision of an engineer signing off on a blueprint, but the emotional and financial chasm he left behind was vast. "We have to be strong now," my mother would say, her grip on my hand a little too tight. "We're all we have." It was a phrase that began as a comfort and, over the years, slowly forged itself into a cage. The Rose who emerged from the divorce was a different woman. The soft, nurturing warmth was replaced by a brittle, anxious energy. 2 years later, she married Martin, a mild-mannered man who sold commercial insurance and seemed content to exist in the periphery of our lives. He moved into our house, a quiet ghost in my father's old armchair, nodding agreeably to my mother's decisions and rarely offering an opinion of his own. "Martin is a good, stable man," she told me, a defensive edge to her voice. "Stability is what we need, Alara. You're old enough to understand that." I understood she had chosen security over love, a transaction I would later come to recognize as a family trait. While my siblings seemed to drift in the wake of our family's upheaval, I anchored myself to my studies. Pain became a catalyst for ambition. I poured every ounce of my energy into academics, earning a full scholarship to the University of Washington's Business School. At my high school graduation, as I stood at the podium delivering the valedictorian address, I saw my family in the crowd. They applauded politely, their pride tinged with something else, something I couldn't name at the time. "You've always been our responsible one," my mother said later, her eyes scanning my face with a speculative gleam. It wasn't the look of a proud parent, it was the look of someone assessing a future investment. College was a whirlwind of independence and hard work. I navigated lectures, part-time jobs, and internships, fueled by cheap coffee and a burning desire to build a life of my own making. While I shared a cramped dorm room, Claire opted for Reed College, a prestigious private liberal arts school whose tuition required my mother and Martin to take on significant loans. Leo, meanwhile, graduated high school by the skin of his teeth and cycled through a series of retail jobs, all while talking vaguely about a tech startup he was going to launch someday. My perseverance paid off. An internship with Pine and Peak Financial, a respected wealth management firm in downtown Portland, turned into a full-time offer upon graduation. At 22, I was earning a salary of $65,000 a year, a figure that felt both astronomical and deeply reassuring. I had built myself a lifeboat. It never occurred to me that my family would expect me to carry them all in it. The first request came 3 weeks after my first paycheck. My mother called, her voice strained with a carefully cultivated panic. "Claire's old Subaru has finally given up the ghost," she said. "The mechanic said it's a transmission issue, Alara. $3,500. With her tuition payment due, we just don't have it." The words hung in the air, a silent, weighty expectation. I logged into my new online banking portal and transferred the money without a second thought. "Thanks, Els. You are a lifesaver," Claire texted a few hours later. It was the last I heard from her for over a month. That transfer opened the floodgates. 2 months later, Leo needed $2,000 for an immersive web development bootcamp that was a guaranteed pathway to a 6-figure job. Then my mother needed help with the property taxes, which had somehow caught her by surprise. Martin's hours were cut. Each request was a new leak in their financial ship, and I was the only one with the tools to patch it. Repayment was always promised, a vague, distant eventuality that never arrived. Family dinners, once a source of comfort, became strategic opportunities to air financial grievances in my presence. A call from home became synonymous with an impending request. The first time I truly felt the ground shift beneath me, I was 24. I had just received a significant promotion and my first real bonus. My mother called me, weeping. "They're going to foreclose on the house, Alara," she sobbed. "We're 4 months behind on the mortgage. Martin's company is downsizing. Claire has all these graduate school application fees. I don't know what we're going to do." I felt a cold dread wash over me. The thought of losing our childhood home, the last tangible piece of our old life, was unbearable. I drained my savings account, the $25,000 I had diligently set aside for a down payment on my own condo, and wired it to her. When I visited the following weekend, the air of crisis had miraculously lifted. A brand new, top-of-the-line gas grill stood gleaming on the back deck, and the living room boasted a new leather sectional. "Incredible floor model deals," my mother explained breezily when she saw me staring. After the stress of nearly losing our home, we just needed a little something to lift our spirits. Later that evening, I overheard Claire on the phone with a friend, laughing about their upcoming spring break trip to Cabo. "My mom and Martin are the best," she chirped. "They said I deserved a break from all the grad school stress." The words landed like small, sharp stones in my gut. I said nothing, and so the pattern was set. I was the provider, the safety net, the ever-reliable Alara who could fix any problem with a bank transfer. They, in turn, were the perpetually deserving, entitled to a life of comfort regardless of their own choices. "Blood is thicker than water, sweetheart," my mother would say, squeezing my arm whenever I showed the slightest hesitation. "We're family. We have to take care of each other." By my 25th birthday, I was living in a small, rented studio apartment in the Pearl District, a space I could barely afford after covering my family's emergencies. I was funding Claire's master's degree in art history and Leo's latest failed venture, a subscription box for artisanal dog treats. I was building their dreams on the graveyard of my own. But they were family, I told myself, a mantra that was beginning to sound more like an excuse than a conviction. As my career flourished, so did their dependence. At 26, I was promoted to senior wealth advisor with a salary of $110,000, yet my disposable income was less than when I'd started. The requests had morphed from occasional crises to regular, expected subsidies. That fall, my mother called, her voice laced with shame. "I've gotten myself into a bit of a mess with the credit cards, honey," she confessed. "I didn't want to worry you, but the interest is just staggering." "How much, Mom?" I asked, already pulling up my banking app. 18,000, she whispered. I flinched but transferred the money, along with a carefully prepared budget spreadsheet I offered to help her implement. She thanked me profusely, promising this was the wake-up call she needed. 2 months later, her social media was filled with photos of a completely remodeled kitchen. When I asked, Martin mumbled something about essential plumbing upgrades, while my mother quickly changed the subject. Leo's big crisis arrived when I was 27. He had finally found his true calling, an ethical, bean-to-cup coffee subscription service. He needed $25,000 for startup capital. "This is it, Alara," he insisted, his eyes shining with a familiar, fleeting passion. "I've got the branding, the suppliers. This is different." His business plan was a few hastily scrawled pages of optimistic projections with no grounding in reality. Against my better judgment, I gave him the money, this time drawing from my 401k and absorbing the early withdrawal penalty. "This is a loan, Leo," I said firmly, making him sign a simple promissory note I'd drafted. "I need to see monthly payments starting in 6 months. "Absolutely," he agreed, his relief palpable. "You won't regret this." 6 months passed. Then 8. When I finally brought it up, he grew defensive. "You don't understand how business works, Alara. It's not all about numbers and deadlines. It's about passion." The artisanal coffee business evaporated a few months later. The $25,000 was never spoken of again. Then came Claire's wedding. She had met a charming real estate developer named Thomas, and after a whirlwind romance, they were engaged. Claire envisioned a lavish, fairy tale affair at a renowned winery in the Willamette Valley. My mother invited me to lunch at a chic bistro to break the news. "We've already put down deposits on the venue and the caterer," she explained, stirring her iced tea. "But Thomas's parents can only contribute so much, and you know our situation." She slid an itemized budget across the table. The bottom line made me feel dizzy, $40,000. "I know it's an incredible amount," my mother said, reading my expression. "But this is Claire's one special day. She deserves to have her dream wedding." I looked at the list. $8,000 for floral arrangements, a custom-designed letterpress invitation suite, a gown from a Parisian designer. A small, quiet question rose in my throat. "What about my dreams, Mom?" Her face hardened for a split second before melting into practiced sympathy. "Oh, honey, don't be like that. You're so independent, so focused on your career. You'll have your turn. But Claire, she needs this. Appearances are so important to her." I signed the check. At the wedding, I was seated with distant cousins while my mother, Martin, and Leo sat at the head table. During the toasts, Claire thanked her parents for making her dream a reality and Thomas's parents for their generosity. My name was never mentioned. I sat there, smiling, a hollow ache spreading through my chest. That night, I went home and bought a simple blue portfolio. Inside, I placed the first document, a copy of the $40,000 check with a note detailing its purpose. The portfolio felt cool and solid in my hands, a silent witness to a truth I was no longer willing to ignore. Over the next few days, I painstakingly recreated the financial history of the last few years, adding every bank statement, every email, every text. The final tally was staggering, over $150,000. And that was just the big stuff. The final straw was the mortgage. By my 29th birthday, I was quietly paying it every month. Martin had been laid off, and my mother had reduced her teaching hours, citing stress. Leo was living at home again, contributing nothing. Claire and Thomas, meanwhile, had just bought a stunning mid-century modern home in the West Hills, a purchase that seemed far beyond their means. I tried to draw a line. "I need to start prioritizing my own future," I explained during a tense family dinner. "I can't keep being the primary financial support for everyone." The backlash was swift and brutal. "After everything I sacrificed for you," my mother said, her voice trembling with manufactured hurt. "Raising you on my own after your father left?" "We're family, Alara. Leo added. You don't just turn your back on family. It's not like you have a husband or kids to spend your money on, Claire pointed out with a casual, cutting cruelty. What else are you going to do with it? I left that night feeling sick, but not before transferring another $4,000 for property taxes they'd forgotten about. The blue portfolio grew heavier. The resentment in my heart grew with it. Something had to change. I just didn't know how to make it happen. The moment of perfect, terrible clarity arrived on a Sunday in September, 3 months before Christmas. I'd come over for our monthly family dinner, letting myself in with the key my mother insisted I keep for emergencies. The house was quiet. I could hear their voices drifting from the back deck, a lazy, sun-drenched murmur of conversation. As I walked through the dining room, my name floated through the open French doors, stopping me in my tracks. Alara's year-end bonus should be huge, my mother was saying, her voice crisp and businesslike. I saw a listing for a little cabin over on the coast, near Cannon Beach. I think we could finally swing it. God, she's such a pushover, Claire laughed, the sound sharp and clear. You just have to look sad and mention the word family and her wallet flies open. Remember when she made me sign that stupid promissory note? Leo chuckled. As if I was ever going to pay that back. She lives in a total fantasy world. She needs us, my mother said, her tone cool and analytical. She has no one else. No real friends, no relationship. We're her whole world. Of course, she'll keep paying. It's how she buys her place in the family. It's almost tragic, Claire mused. All that money, and for what? She lives in that tiny apartment and wears the same boring clothes. She doesn't even know how to enjoy it. To Alara, Martin said, his voice thick as he raised his glass. The gift that keeps on giving. Their collective laughter washed over me, a wave of acid that burned away the last of my illusions. I stood frozen in the dining room, the bottle of Pinot Noir I'd brought feeling impossibly heavy in my hand. It wasn't just that they were using me. It was the contempt they held for me while doing so. The pity. The casual, cruel dismissal of my entire existence. I backed away slowly, my movements stiff and robotic. I slipped out the front door, closing it silently behind me. In my car, my hands trembled so violently I couldn't put the key in the ignition. I sat there for 10 minutes, the sound of their laughter echoing in my head. Finally, I managed to text my mother. Sudden migraine. So sorry to miss dinner. Another time. Her reply came instantly. Oh no, honey. Take care of yourself. P.S. Martin has a dentist appointment next week for a crown, and you know our dental plan is terrible. That night, sleep was impossible. The conversation played on a loop, each word a fresh cut. By dawn, the profound hurt had begun to harden into a cold, diamond-sharp resolve. I called in sick to work and spent the day online, my search terms evolving from family financial problems to financial abuse and emotional manipulation. The stories I read were chillingly familiar. I was not alone. This had a name. By the end of the week, I had made 2 appointments. The first was with a therapist, Dr. Anya Sharma, who specialized in complex family trauma. The second was with a lawyer, Evelyn Reed, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who specialized in financial recovery cases. Dr. Sharma listened patiently as my story tumbled out. Alara, she said gently when I was done, what you're describing is a classic pattern of exploitation. It's a form of abuse. The fact that it's your family doesn't make it any less damaging. In fact, it makes it more so. Evelyn Reed was more direct. She examined the contents of my blue portfolio with a grim expression. You've been operating as their unaccredited personal bank for 7 years, she stated, her voice devoid of sentiment. These weren't gifts freely given. They were funds obtained under duress and false pretenses. You have a very strong case. What can I do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You can stop the bleeding, she said. And you can start the process of reclaiming what's yours, both financially and emotionally. With their guidance, a plan began to form. First, on Evelyn's recommendation, I hired a discreet private investigator. His report, delivered 2 weeks later, was devastating. My mother's credit card debt was, in fact, gambling losses at Spirit Mountain Casino. The money for the kitchen remodel had covered a week-long losing streak at the blackjack tables. Leo had never even registered the coffee business. My $25,000 investment had been the down payment on a nearly new Audi, which he kept garaged at a friend's house. And Claire and Thomas had used the mortgage help I'd given them to close on a vacation condo in Bend, a trendy resort town in Central Oregon. The medical bills I'd paid were for a series of cosmetic procedures she'd had done. The evidence was a gut punch, but it was also a liberation. It was proof that my unease had been justified, that my resentment was not an overreaction. It was the truth, stark and undeniable. I spent October and November preparing. I meticulously organized the blue portfolio, adding the PI's report, copies of casino statements, vehicle registrations, and property deeds. Evelyn drafted legal documents outlining repayment demands. Dr. Sharma helped me role-play conversations, building my confidence and preparing me for the inevitable emotional fallout. We decided the confrontation had to happen on Christmas Day. It wasn't about cruelty, it was about strategy. It was the one day of the year I could guarantee their presence without raising suspicion. As the holidays approached, the familiar pattern of requests began. My mother hinted about the cost of Christmas. Leo mentioned a can't-miss crypto opportunity. Claire complained about the expense of hosting dinner. I met each entreaty with polite, non-committal sympathy, offering no funds. Their messages grew more pointed, then bewildered, then cold. 2 days before Christmas, Claire called to inform me that Christmas was now at Mom's house, and I was expected to bring the prime rib and a case of good wine. I agreed without a word of protest. I had already bought their gifts, the last I would ever give them under the old arrangement. Thoughtful, expensive gifts that would serve as a final, poignant counterpoint to the events that were about to unfold. Christmas Eve, I lay awake, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I was about to detonate a bomb in the center of my own life, potentially losing the only family I had. But beneath the fear was a current of unwavering resolve. 7 years was enough. My life was my own, and it was time to claim it. Christmas morning was crisp and cold, the sky a rare, brilliant blue over the damp Portland streets. I dressed with care in a cashmere sweater and tailored wool trousers, an outfit that felt like armor. I packed the gifts, the prime rib, the wine, and finally, the blue portfolio, its smooth cover cool beneath my fingertips. I arrived at my mother's house at 11 a.m. The driveway was full. Christmas carols drifted from the open door, mingling with the smell of coffee and cinnamon. "Alara's here," my mother called, her embrace feeling brittle and practiced. "Merry Christmas, honey." The house was a showcase of holiday excess. An enormous fir tree, professionally decorated, dominated the living room. Lavish garlands spiraled up the staircase. The PI's report had included credit card statements detailing over $4,000 in charges to high-end decor shops. "It all looks so lovely, Mom," I said, and I meant it. Her taste had always been impeccable. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. Conversations were stilted. My mother and Claire exchanged loaded glances. Leo seemed unusually agitated. We went through the motions of Christmas breakfast, the small talk feeling like a thin layer of ice over a deep, dark lake. Then came the gifts. They presented theirs first. Claire gave me a kitschy mug that read, "Best Sister Ever." The price tag still stuck to the bottom. Leo gave me a generic scented candle. My mother and Martin gave me a scarf that I recognized as one of my mother's. I then distributed my gifts, a beautiful fountain pen and leather journal for Leo's ideas, a first edition copy of a book on art history for Claire, and a gift certificate for a weekend at the Allison Inn and Spa for my mother and Martin. The expensive, thoughtful gifts seemed to make them uncomfortable. They murmured their thanks, setting them aside quickly. "Well," my mother said, breaking the awkward silence. That was very generous of you, Alara. She looked at Claire. Actually, Claire said, straightening up as if on cue. There's something we need to talk to you about. The room fell silent. We've been talking, as a family, about our dynamic. And we've made a decision. She paused for dramatic effect. We had a family vote. A vote. I repeated, my heart starting to hammer against my ribs. This was it. Yes. And we've decided, she said, a cold little smile playing on her lips, that you're no longer our sister. The words were so blunt, so stunningly cruel, that they seemed to suck the air from the room. What Claire means, my mother jumped in, her face a mask of pained sincerity, is that we feel a separation would be healthy. For everyone. You've become controlling with your money, Leo mumbled, staring at his shoes. It makes us feel like we always owe you something. We need to break this toxic cycle, Claire finished. So, we're asking you to leave. We need space to heal as a family without you. I looked at their faces, Claire's smug triumph, Leo's guilty discomfort, my mother's theatrical sorrow, Martin's passive acquiescence. They weren't just asking for money anymore. I had stopped being useful and now I was being discarded. The finality of it was strangely calming. The grief I had anticipated was absent, replaced by a profound, chilling clarity. Relief. Without saying a word, I stood up, walked to my bag, and retrieved the blue portfolio. I walked back to the Christmas tree, its cheerful lights blinking obliviously, and placed the portfolio beneath its lowest boughs. It sat there, a sleek, ominous package amidst the festive debris. What is that? Claire asked, her confidence faltering. My mother's performance dissolved. The look on her face was pure, undiluted fear. Alara, what is this? That, I said, my voice even and clear, is the invoice. The blue portfolio sat under the tree, a silent, damning indictment. No one moved. An invoice, my mother finally repeated, her voice a thin, reedy whisper. 7 years of receipts, I said, my voice steady. I reached down, opened the portfolio, and removed the top sheet, a spreadsheet. The grand total comes to $267,450. That's a conservative estimate. A strangled gasp came from my mother. Leo's face had gone ashen. That's not possible, he stammered. Oh, it's all possible, I said, laying a sheaf of highlighted bank statements on the coffee table. $25,000 for Leo Vance, for a business that was never incorporated. I added the PI's photos. But the Audi A4 you bought the following week certainly was. Is it still parked at your friend Matt's place? Leo looked like he was going to be sick. I turned to Claire. $40,000 for your dream wedding. An additional $22,000 for mortgage help and medical bills. I placed the photos of the Bend condo on the table next to the bank statements. This lovely place was purchased 4 days after I transferred you the money to save your house. And the medical bills corresponded perfectly with the dates of your cosmetic procedures. Your surgeon does lovely work, by the way. Claire's face was a blotchy, furious red. You had us investigated? You psycho. That's the legal. No, Claire. It's called due diligence. And it's all perfectly legal. My gaze shifted to my mother. And Mom. The gambling was the real surprise. Spirit Mountain Casino must know you by name. The credit card debt I paid off? The emergency roof repair that never happened? All fed into the slot machines. Martin, who had been silent until now, stared at my mother in genuine disbelief. Rose? Gambling? What is she talking about? My mother's eyes blazed with pure hatred. How dare you air our private matters? These stopped being your private matters the moment you used my money to fund them, I said. From the portfolio, I produced a small digital recorder. But my documentation is nothing compared to your own words. I pressed play. Their voices, tinny and cruel, filled the silent room. God, she's such a pushover. You just have to look sad. She needs us. It's how she buys her place in the family. It's almost tragic. To Alara, The gift that keeps on giving. Their recorded laughter echoed off the expensive, professionally decorated walls. The silence that followed was absolute. I wasn't sick that night in September, I said quietly. I was in the dining room. I heard every word. I looked at them, a tableau of broken people caught in the glare of a truth they could no longer deny. For 7 years, I told myself I was helping my family. I sacrificed my own dreams, my own financial security, my own life, because I thought that's what love was. But I wasn't helping you. I was enabling you. And you weren't my family. You were my dependents. I began to pack the documents back into the portfolio. My lawyer, Evelyn Reed, has drafted repayment agreements for each of you. A lawyer? Leo choked out. Yes. She finds my case for financial fraud extremely compelling. She advised pursuing criminal charges, but I've decided to offer you a choice. I stood and slung my bag over my shoulder. Option 1. You sign the agreements. You enter therapy, individual and family. You take accountability. And we try very slowly to build something real. Option 2. You refuse and Evelyn files the lawsuits on January 2nd. The choice is yours. You would sue your own family, my mother whispered, horrified. According to Claire, I don't have one anymore. I walked to the door, then paused. The gifts I brought today are yours to keep. No strings attached. Consider them a final lesson in what generosity without expectation looks like. As I walked out into the cold, bright sunshine, I felt a profound sense of release. The door closed behind me, not with a bang, but with a quiet, decisive click. It was the sound of a caged door swinging open. I had barely reached my car when the front door burst open. You can't just do this. Claire screamed, her voice raw with fury as she followed me onto the driveway. The rest of them trailed behind her, a ragged, defeated-looking group huddled on the front porch. I already did it, I said, turning to face them. The crisp winter air felt clean in my lungs. Elara, please, my mother began, her face crumpled in what, for the first time, looked like genuine despair. We were wrong. I was wrong. She started to cry, not the performative tears I was used to, but ragged, ugly sobs. The gambling, it started small. After your father left, I felt so lost. It was a way to feel something. I kept thinking I could win it all back, make everything right. And you let it go on for years, I said, my voice softer now, devoid of anger. You could have asked for real help. I was so ashamed, she wept. A heavy silence descended, broken only by my mother's quiet sobs. The perfect Christmas scene was in ruins, and in its place was a terrible, honest wreckage. What now? Leo asked, his voice barely audible. The letters, I said, pulling 5 sealed envelopes from my bag. They explain everything. The repayment terms, the therapy requirements, the boundaries we will have if we are to have any relationship at all. I handed one to each of them. These are my terms for reconciliation. Not for forgiveness, that's a different road. This is the path to respect. And if we agree? Claire asked, her voice stripped of its earlier arrogance. Then we begin the work, I said. And if you don't, then we let the lawyers do their work. I looked at them one last time, standing on the porch of the house my money had kept, holding the consequences of their actions in their hands. The power had shifted. The dynamic was broken, and perhaps, just perhaps, something better could be built in its place. Driving away, I didn't look back. The grief I had braced myself for was still absent. In its place was a quiet, expansive peace. For the first time in my adult life, I felt light. Free. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was, finally and completely, my own. The blue portfolio had done its job. It had not been an instrument of revenge, but an instrument of truth. And the truth, I was learning, was the only foundation on which a life of worth could be built. 6 months have passed since that Christmas. The path has not been easy. My mother is in a treatment program for her gambling addiction and attends weekly meetings. She and Martin are in counseling. Leo sold his Audi and has enrolled in a trade school, working a part-time job to make his monthly payments to me. He calls me sometimes, not to ask for anything, but just to talk. Claire remains the most resistant, her compliance sullen, but she is complying. We attend family therapy sessions via Zoom, mediated by a professional who helps us navigate the minefield of our history. Our relationships are not healed, but they are, for the first time, honest. As for me, I finally bought my own home, a small, light-filled condo with a balcony overlooking the Willamette River. I am cultivating a garden of herbs and flowers in pots. I have joined a hiking club and made friends who know me only as a Laura, not as a provider. The blue portfolio sits on a shelf in my office, no longer an archive of grievances, but a reminder of my own strength. A reminder that setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty, but the highest form of self-respect. The future of my family is an unanswered question, but my own future is a blank page, and for the first time, I am holding the pen.